Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really close look at something pretty cutting edge in AI. We're talking about agents that don't just crunch data, they actually simulate human behavior. Our goal here is to unpack how these, well, synthetic people are built, and crucially, how accurate they really are. Because, let's be honest, making big decisions in business, policy, wherever, you're often working with incomplete info. It leads to what the research calls bad bets.
Yeah, and this challenge, predicting how groups will react,
Yeah.
it's not new at all.
Yeah.
You can go way back, like Robert Merton, the sociologist, was writing about this in 1906.
1906.
Yeah,
Ugh.
he had this great example about crowds. Everyone tries to avoid the busy spot, right? But because they all have that same idea, they all end up jammed in the exact same place anyway.
Mhm.
It's hard to design for that collective outcome.
Exactly. So we kind of fantasize about having this what-if machine,
Yeah.
so something to test drive a new policy or a product launch or even a management style, but safely in a simulation first. See what happens before rolling it out for real.
And simulation itself, the basic idea, has been around. Thomas Schelling got a Nobel for agent-based models back in 1978. And lots of people know things like The Sims.
Right, with the game.
But those older models, they were always very stylized, as the researchers say. Too simple, too rigid. Maybe 5 fixed traits like, if happy, do this. Or you had to write these incredibly detailed, brittle scripts.
Yeah.
They just didn't have much real-world impact because, well, people aren't that simple.
Okay, so simulation isn't brand new. What's the big change now? What makes these new agents different?
It's really the large language models, the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, all of them. They've learned from this colossal amount of text and data, everything from academic papers to like endless social media conversations.
Basically everything humans have written down.
Pretty much. They've ingested the whole messy story of human behavior. And that training lets them adopt really rich, diverse, nuanced perspectives. It's way beyond those old fixed personality sliders.
Okay, that tracks. So let's get into the specifics. There was this big experiment, right? The simulated town, Smallville. That went kind of viral.
That's the one. Smallville. They created this little digital town with 25 of these generative agents, each one an AI playing a specific person.
And what made it interesting wasn't just that they existed, but how they interacted. Yeah.
Exactly. It was the spontaneous stuff. Like you had John, the pharmacist. His son, Eddie, is a college student studying music. John finds out Eddie's working on a composition.
Okay.
Later, when John's wife, May, wakes up, John actually has to remember that specific detail, the music theory conversation, to tell her about it. Information spread organically, not because of some script.
That's pretty subtle. It's like those little details that bubble up in real towns. But they really pushed it with that Valentine's Day test, didn't they?
Oh yeah, that was the key test for emergence.
Yeah.
They gave one agent, Isabella, who runs the cafe, just the basic intent to throw a Valentine's party, starting the day before, February 13th.
Just the intent, not like a checklist or anything?
Nope. No party planning module baked in. The agents had to figure it out themselves. Remember the goal, talk to each other, spread the word, get help, actually coordinate.
Okay, so how did it play out? Did anyone show up?
It worked surprisingly well. Isabella remembered, and she went and recruited her friend Maria to help decorate the cafe.
Mm-hmm.
By the next day, word had gotten around.
Yeah.
Half the town, 12 out of the 25 agents, had heard about the party, and 5 actually showed up.
Wow.
And here's the kicker, the really human, unscripted detail. Maria asked her crush, Klaus, to the party.
No way. The AI developed a crush.
Well, the simulation produced that dynamic. It showed these agents could generate believable, unscripted social interactions, even slightly awkward ones.
Okay, so they're believable, but the real value is testing interventions, right? Like changing the circumstances.
Exactly. They did this neat follow-up study. They piped in news updates over the radio. In one scenario, the news was about a communicable disease spreading, swine flu, I think.
And what happened to the party then?
Almost nobody showed up. Classic social distancing behavior emerged spontaneously. Except for poor Klaus. Apparently he missed the broadcast.
Ah, always close.
Always Klaus. But then they ran it again with news of a non-infectious disease. And the party happened just like before. It shows you can test these complex what-ifs information flow, public health fears, social dynamics, all in the simulation.
That Smallville example is really compelling. It makes you ask, okay, how did they actually build these things? How do you get that level of believable memory and personality without just writing a million lines of script?
Right, it's not magic. There's a specific architecture behind it. The research highlights 3 core components.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the memory stream. Think of it like a detailed diary or logbook for the agent. Every single observation, every action, every thought gets recorded there. Seeing a bed, writing in a journal, having a conversation.
But wouldn't that get huge, like incredibly fast? How does the AI find relevant stuff in potentially millions of entries?
That's the key problem they solved. If you just dump the whole memory stream into the LLM, it gets overwhelmed. It's like trying to find one sentence in a giant library.
Right, information overload.
So they use something called RAG retrieval augmented generation. You can think of RAG as like a super smart search function or filing clerk for the memory.
Okay, how does ARGA decide what's important?
It uses three main criteria: recency, what just happened; relevance, what relates to the agent's current situation or task; and the really clever one, importance.
Importance. How does an AI judge importance?
The system learns to assign an importance score. So the memory of brushing your teeth, that gets a low score. But the memory of being asked out to the Valentine's party, that gets a really high score. So our guy prioritizes retrieving those high-impact memories.
Got it. So memory stream plus smart retrieval. But just remembering events, even important ones, doesn't make a personality, does it? That sounds like just a log.
Exactly right. That brings us to the second component, reflection. Memory alone is just, as you said, an episodic log, like a ship captain noting the weather each day.
That needs to add up to something more.
Precisely. The agents need to synthesize. They need those shower thoughts, you could call them. Reflection is the process where the agent periodically looks back over its recent memories and generate higher-level conclusions about itself, its patterns, its goals.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say the memory stream shows Klaus Mueller has been reading articles about gentrification for 3 days straight, and he also noted down applying for a city planning internship.
Okay.
The reflection process might look at those specific memory entries and generate a higher-level thought like, Klaus spends a lot of time reading about urban development and seems interested in city planning.
Ah, so it's like drawing conclusions from the data points.
Yeah, exactly. And crucially, that reflection itself gets added back into the memory stream, tagged as important. This helps ensure Klaus behaves consistently with that observed interest in the future. It stops the agent from just randomly changing its focus minute by minute.
Okay, so we have memory stream with ARGI and reflection. What's the third piece?
The third is planning and adaptation. Agents need structure for their day, so they use hierarchical planning. They start with a broad plan for the whole day.
Like work from 9 to 5, then go home.
Sort of, yeah. Then they drill down to hour-by-hour plans and even minute-by-minute actions if needed. But the real key here is adaptation.
Things don't always go according to plan.
Never. So let's say John the pharmacist is heading to lunch according to his plan, but he suddenly sees his son Eddie walking down the street.
An unexpected event.
Right. The agent has to instantly process that observation, decide if it's important enough to react to maybe initiate a conversation, and if it does, it has to dynamically replan the rest of its hour or even its day on the fly. That real-time adjustment is vital for making them feel alive.
Okay, memory, reflection, planning, adaptation. That architecture sounds robust, but, and this is a big but, believable isn't the same as accurate, is it? Mickey Mouse is believable in his world, but you wouldn't base economic policy on him.
That is the critical distinction, and it was the biggest challenge moving beyond Smallville.
How do you stop these agents from just becoming like really sophisticated stereotypes?
Yeah, that's the danger. Early attempts using just basic demographic info, age, job, maybe a short persona description, often resulted in exactly that. Rigid stereotype behavior.
You mentioned an example.
There was a really stark one. They asked a simple persona-based model what a simulated South Korean agent might eat for lunch. The answer was just rice.
Yeah, that's not capturing much nuance.
Not at all. It's sparse, potentially biased. To get real accuracy, you need much richer input data.
So what did they do? How did they get that richness?
They went deep. They conducted these incredibly thorough 2-hour-long interviews with 1,000 real Americans, who consented, of course.
2 hours each. What do they cover?
Everything. Life stories, financial situations, health, community involvement, political views, their uncertainties, their contradictions. The whole messy picture.
Wow.
And that entire detailed interview transcript, that became the initial memory stream for the agent. They essentially created a digital twin based on that deep qualitative data.
A digital twin of a real person based on their own words. That's a huge step up. So they have these 1,000 twins. How on earth do you measure if they're actually accurate reflection?
Rigorously. They used standard tools from social science. The main one was the General Social Survey, the GSS.
I've heard of that. It's massive, right?
Huge. About 170 questions. covering complex attitudes on everything. It's been a benchmark for tracking American public opinion for decades.
Yeah.
They gave the exact same GSS and other behavioral tests to both the original 1,000 people and their digital twin agents.
Okay, comparing apples to apples, and how did they score it?
They use a metric called the replication ratio. But here's the clever part. They benchmarked it against how consistent the real people were with themselves. They had the real people take the surveys again 2 weeks later.
Ah, so perfect accuracy, a ratio of 1.0, means the agent is exactly as consistent as the actual person is over a 2-week period.
Precisely. If you were just guessing randomly on the GSS, you'd get about 33% replication. Those older, simpler persona-based agents, maybe they hit around 70%.
And these new digital twins build from the full interviews.
They achieved an 85% replication ratio.
85%, that sounds really high.
It's a significant leap. And get this, even when they tried deleting a random 80% of the 2-hour interview data,
80% deleted.
yeah, leaving only about 20% of the original transcript. The replication ratio only dropped slightly to around 79%. It suggests the LLM can extract a lot of accurate behavioral signal from relatively sparse but high-quality qualitative input.
Okay, 85% is impressive compared to 70% or 33%. But if I'm making a really high-stakes decision, like a central bank setting interest rates or a regulator approving a policy, that remaining 15% error margin still feels potentially huge, doesn't it?
That is absolutely the right question to ask, and the answer is yes, you have to be cautious. 85% is great progress, but it's not 100%. Errors do still happen in the simulation.
Like what kind of error?
Well, there was one specific case they reported where the simulation predicted only 1.2% of a certain demographic were familiar with retirement account fees. But the actual ground truth from surveys was closer to 13%.
That's a big difference, more than 10x off.
It is, and it means anyone using this technology needs to approach it with a clear understanding of its current limitations. The researchers propose using a trust ladder.
A trust ladder. Okay, explain that.
It's basically 4 rungs, moving from low-risk applications where the tech works well now to higher-risk ones where you need more caution.
Okay, rung 1, low risk.
Rung 1 is possibility, just asking what might happen, exploring potential scenarios. This mostly works today. It's good for thinking through, say, how online trolls might exploit a new feature so you can build safeguards.
Makes sense. Rung 2.
Qualitative insights, understanding general attitudes, likely conversation outcomes, getting a feel for how a policy might be received. With rich data, like those interviews, this generally works pretty well, gives you a directional sense.
Right, the general vibe. Okay, rung 3 must be where it gets tricky.
That's quantitative predictions. Needing specific numbers, percentages, histograms, bar charts, that's where that 1.2% of today's 13% error really bites you.
So what's the advice there? Don't use it for numbers.
The recommendation right now is use the simulation to filter your options. Say you have 100 different marketing ideas. Use the simulation to narrow that down to the maybe 5 most promising ones.
Okay, increase efficiency.
Exactly. But then, for the final decision on those 5, you still need to A/B test them with real people. Don't rely solely on the simulation for the final quantitative proof. Not yet, anyway.
And the top rung, highest risk.
That's multi-agent simulation, like Smallville, where you're trying to predict the emergent outcome of many agents interacting. To trust that complex group behavior, you first need to trust the accuracy of every single agent involved.
And if each is only 85% accurate, the combined potential for error grows.
Precisely.
Okay.
So for really critical predictions based on emergent behavior, the advice is definitely proceed with caution. The underlying accuracy needs to improve further first.
Going back to the validation for a second, though, that finding about replicating previous scientific studies seems really important.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the most striking results. They took 5 published social science studies and had the agents basically rerun them in the simulation.
And?
They correctly predicted the outcomes of 4 out of the 5 studies.
Okay, 4 out of 5 is good. What about the 5th one?
This is the fascinating part. The 5th study failed to replicate in the simulation. The agents didn't show the effect the original paper claimed. But then, the researchers also tested that same study design on the 1,000 real people they had recruited. And it failed to replicate with the real people, too. The simulation actually flagged potentially bad science before the real-world replication attempt did. It acted like an integrity check.
Wow, that suggests it's capturing something fundamentally real about human responses. Okay, beyond research and maybe filtering policy ideas, what are the applications we might see soon?
Well, one big area is what you might call look before you launch. especially for online platforms and communities.
Oh, so.
Right now, platform moderation is often reactive. Something bad happens, a dumpster fire of low-quality posts, or some kind of exploitation, and then management scrambles to change the rules after the fact.
Yeah, playing catch-up.
Simulation lets managers model how proposed rule changes or new features might actually play out before they go live, see how users might adapt or even misuse them. It allows for more proactive, thoughtful governance design.
Okay, testing policies in advance. What else?
Soft skills training is another big one. Using these agents as sparring partners for difficult conversations.
Like practicing a salary negotiation?
Exactly. Or handling workplace conflicts. They ran an experiment on this too. One group just watched a standard lecture on conflict negotiation strategies. Another group watched the same lecture. But then they got to practice those techniques in simulated conversations with the agents.
And did the practice help?
It made a huge difference in behavior. On a knowledge test afterwards, both groups did about the same. They both knew the strategies.
Okay.
But when faced with a real conflict situation later, the group that had practiced with the simulation was 2/3 less likely to resort to aggressive or antisocial tactics. They didn't just know the theory, they'd internalized how to apply it. The simulation bridged the gap between knowing and doing.
That's a powerful result. So wrapping up, we've gone from these, quite basic stylized models of the past.
The 5-parameter agents.
Right, to these incredibly sophisticated systems that combine the power of LLMs with things like structured memory, reflection, and planning. And by feeding them rich, real-life data, we get these digital twins.
Capable of replicating human survey responses and behaviors with about 85% the consistency of the actual person.
It really feels like a major leap forward.
It definitely changes the landscape for social science, for policy modeling, potentially for training. The creation of these large consented agent banks like the 1,000 U.S. participants opens the door to asking really complex societal questions in a new way.
Like testing interventions for political depolarization, maybe, or different approaches to climate change communications?
Exactly. Things that are too difficult, expensive, or ethically fraught to test at scale in the real world. Now we have a sandbox, albeit one we still need to use carefully.
It's an incredible capability to be able to look ahead, even imperfectly. But maybe here's a final thought for you listening. If even an AI twin armed with a 2-hour deep dive into your life story can only match your own consistency about 85% of the time, what does that lingering 15% gap, that inherent unpredictability, tell us about the fundamental complexity and maybe even the freedom of being human?